Chapter 7. The Furious Ones. Thump, 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 bump, thump, 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 bump, thump, thump, thump. Enoch could hear the noise of the celebration well underway as he made his way slowly towards his tent. He passed a few younglings skipping and tapping their feet to the beat as they ran behind their mothers toward the fire of celebration. Even without seeing the dances of old, the rhythmic pulsing still told the story. Every tribe knew the language of the drums. It could be heard over great distances, pounding the news of a successful son. Sounds like the talebearers are repeating the tale of creation now. Enoch relaxed his tense shoulders just a bit and pulled an alati cake out of his waist pack. He bit into the soft, sweet mound as he left the well-lit path leading to the center of the settee and made for the darkened passages, heading towards his white tent on the outskirts of the camp. For once, he was glad that his own dwelling would be empty, as a Medici, his wife Adna, was staying in the tents of the Greens for the duration of the celebration of the new son, so she could be available to Grandmother Eve. His daughters also went, after Methuselah was learning the way of the Nashpanel, the scouts who dedicated themselves to protecting the tribe. His younger brothers followed along like shadows wherever they could. They were all guarding the borders of the settee this eve. Methuselah had chosen to make his home with the Nashpanel. He said it was because staying with them would increase his learning. But Enoch knew better. He knew his son longed for the companionship and acceptance of the tribe. Methuselah always tried to prove himself worthy through daring acts to overshadow his name and the ominous prophecy given with it. Enoch shook his head and kicked the dust. The boy does seem invincible. No way, it never overtakes him. Unfortunately, Methuselah's actions had the opposite effect. Instead of impressing his kinsmen and drawing them closer, it pushed them away. When they realized his life had to be especially favored by the Ancient One, the other young men his age were cautious at best or jealous at worst, and heartedly sighing. He knew he hadn't helped Methuselah much. Instead, he spent most of his time devoted to prayer and seeking the will of the Ancient One, especially since Adam's death. But Tafara, already accustomed to the wariness of the tribe because of her unusual appearance, had become very close to Methuselah, offering advice and encouragement when nothing he or Adna said seemed to help. This drew his thanks and strengthened the bond between him and his cousin, while serving to strain relations with his wife. Enoch made a mental note to pray to the Ancient One about this and the other trouble bothering him this eve. Praise the light, I will get to the truth of this. Enoch kicked a loose stone and thought of Samjaz again. The man was exceptional for truth, but in Elohim, somehow the captain's presence didn't remind him of the Ancient One at all. Yet, there was something familiar about him. What was it? Enoch entered his tent, and after a quick perusal, he found the items he needed. He dug into the heavy stone chest and lifted out a worn leather sack. From it, he took a small jar of myrrh, a pouch of incense. He held the rod gently and rubbed it with the soft, tattered cloth until it gleamed in the light of the full moon streaming in through the loose folds of the tent. The golden rod from the Cave of Treasures was his most valued possession. It was a special gift from Grandmother Eve. She had given each of the firstborn sons one at their birth, as a reminder of their home in the garden and the Ancient One's promise that they and their offspring should one day return. Enoch always used these precious items whenever he prayed to the Hidden Father for guidance. Enoch looked sadly at the pouch and the jar. They were almost empty. He had enough for one, maybe two more. He knew other firstborn sons whose jars and pouches were still full. He'd once asked Tubal-Cain about his. Only a fool would waste his birthright on the altar of sacrifice, especially when the Ancient One has not required it, his cousin responded. He hated to admit it, but even his father Jared had thought he was being too exhaling resins on the altar to the Ancient One on his 12th birthday. The others were afraid to use it, knowing that once the special gift delivered to Adam and Eve by the angel Gabriel was gone, there would be no more. They always waited for the right time to use it. It never came. Enoch took a deep breath and then laid the incense on the flame. Enoch took a deep breath and then laid the incense on the mantle-heated stone surrounding the lone golden rod in the center. Pop! Enoch sighed as he watched the sparks overtake the aromatic amber-colored chunks and flicker into flames. Next, he sprinkled a bit of the myrrh over the small, sweet puffs of smoke as the oily substance caught fire. Enoch closed the tent opening and lifted one of the flaps overhead to let the aroma drift towards the starry sky. He placed the pouch and the jar carefully back into the leather sack, but not before shaking each one gingerly in his hand. He couldn't be sure, but it did seem like there was enough for at least one more sacrifice. Come to think of it, Enoch muttered to himself as he knelt beside the fire and pressed his face to the soft earth beneath him. There always seemed to be enough for one more. Enoch dismissed the idea as quickly as it had come, always did, thanking the Ancient One for everything that he could think of, his family, his relationship with Adnah and Methuselah, the reward of a good day's toil, and of course, finding the Alru. Then he blessed the name of the Ancient One and asked for forgiveness of his sins, naming as many as he could. Last, he began singing praises to the Hidden Father. Enoch lost track of time. He felt his skin becoming hot and saturated with beads of perspiration. His knees ached under the weight of his frame, and he felt a cramp along the back of his neck. His throat was dry and parched. Enoch gulped and paused. He listened. No voice, nothing. Enoch gulped and paused. He listened. No voice, nothing. Enoch pushed himself upright. Maybe Tubal-Cain was right. Enoch stopped and stared, too afraid to move. Something was in the room. He watched as the darkened corners of the tent brightened. Enoch rubbed his beard before him, sitting around the fire. Greetings, Enoch, son of Adam, said the man sitting across the fire. His tawny skin looked as ruddy as Enoch's own. If Enoch didn't know better, he might have confused him for one of his uncles. He couldn't say the same for the other two men on his right and left. They were unusual. One had skin so dark it blended into the night, making his brilliant blue eyes stand out all the more. The other's flesh was as fair as the pale sands along the shore of the Pison, with eyes the color of the grassy meadows of the Seven Hills. Strange appearance, and eyes such as these, but it was rare. The council still hadn't decided whether these signs were a blessing or a curse. Those who did look different were treated with caution. Enoch opened his mouth to speak, but only a raspy whisper responded. Be at ease, man of dust. A prayer, said the pale man. We have been sent to reveal the mysteries of the Hidden Father and his sons. Because you have sacrificed that which was not required, the Ancient One has granted you wisdom and vision to see that which has been. Enoch felt his parched mouth moisten and his sight sharpen to the point where he could see even the minuscule grains on the ash surrounding the fire in fine detail. He now noticed the soft golden light emanating from these men as he stared into the fire. What? Enoch squinted and leaned forward. He saw men fighting within the flames. There were hundreds, no thousands of them, too many to count. Vast mountains rose up on either side of the fiery valley in which they fought. One man stood out above all the others. He was glorious in appearance. Precious stones adorned his garment, and brilliant light came forth from him. He commanded his men to charge the mountain in a voice that bellowed as the horn. Many men, also bearing light, rose up against the army, but they could not defeat them. The battle raged on. Enoch leaned in closer to the fire, almost singeing his burning cheeks, but he could not pull away. He had never seen fighting so fierce. They used rods of sharp metal, curved and straight. They wrestled, kicked, punched, and pummeled each other with great blows. Still, neither could defeat the other. Finally, a great burst of light appeared in the middle of the battle, more radiant than all the other lights. And from that light a voice spoke, and the sound of it was like thunder from without and within. Cast him out and within. Cast him out. A man appeared within the great light and watched as the great warrior of terrible countenance seized the glorious bejeweled one and threw him toward the heavens until he could be seen no more. The one which was thrown screamed and cursed the great light, because one's with him, thundered the voice again. Now every man led by the great warrior seized the ones they fought against and also threw them toward the heavens. Their shrieks and profanities echoed angrily through the flames, so distinct and tangible. Enoch looked around his tent, expecting to see the furious ones cry. Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast, whispered the talebearer as he crouched low and circled the fire. A colorful winged creature appeared at his words, surprising the crowd by soaring over them with grace and agility. The man inside, the elaborate costume, swung to the ground from the vine that carried him and began an intricate dance. A young woman, wearing a long sheer white garment and a crown made of the petals of many flowers, skipped from the onlookers and joined the dance of the serpent with the carefree exuberance of a child. A handsome young man, also adorned in a robe of pure white, chased the girl and tried to catch her as she and the serpent swirled around and around him with dizzying speed. And he said unto Eve, the talebearer continued, did the Ancient One really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden? Ancient One really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden? Abruptly, the drums, the chant stopped. The dancers froze in their tracks. No one spoke or moved as the young woman stepped forward and answered the question. We may eat fruit from the trees in the garden, but the Ancient One did say, you must or you will die. Again the pounding began, heavy and foreboding in its rhythm. Slowly and surely the serpent began a new dance, smooth and tantalizing, as he dangled a leafy branch laden with ripe fruit before her eyes. You will not certainly die, for the Ancient One knows that when laden with ripe fruit before her eyes. You will not certainly die, for the Ancient One knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like him, knowing good and evil, said the talebearer. The young woman leaped and reached for the fruit again and again, but the serpent kept it just. The young man sat silently and watched. After many attempts, the young woman seized the fruit and shoved it triumphantly into her mouth. Then she gave it to her handsome companion, and he too ate. Enoch stared into the flames again. Fire. This time he saw the glorious one who had been defeated fall with force into a dark pit with walls of stone that gleamed from the heat of a fiery substance. Manta, Enoch whispered as he looked on. Though he wanted to tear his eyes away, somehow he was able to hear the thoughts of the enraged being and experience his emotions as if he himself had been the one conquered and thrust out. Enoch saw the glorious one burn and seethe with pain as his beautiful countenance was marred and scorched by the intense fire. Yet he did not die. One by one, the men who fought fell into the pit and experienced the same fate. They yelled and screamed at their leader with bitter reviling as they wiggled and writhed from the excruciating heat. See what your father has done, he bellowed as he shook his fist upward, but I will save you and restore your beauty. The furious one began to climb upward, leaving the shrieks and screams of terror. He climbed and climbed up a steep ascent until finally he reached a cool, dark place encased in stone. He saw light peering in from an opening. He shielded his eyes, now accustomed to the darkness, from the light as he walked towards it and peered out. The creature began to laugh uncontrollably, although Enoch thought it sounded more like a snarl. He cannot even keep me from his precious garden. He is not all powerful. The glorious one, now covered with gross burns, ran towards the garden, yearning to cool his inflamed skin in the rushing water he heard in the distance. Finally, he reached it and dove headfirst into its clear depths. He came up and shook his head in confusion. Instead of cool, refreshing wetness, he felt nothing. Rage began to seethe from some deep place inside him. He raced out of the water and ran to the trees near, reached out and tasted some. Again, nothing. No sweet flavor, not even the texture of the fleshy fruit could he discern. Now cold fear and awareness joined his simmering anger as he watched a stunningly handsome creature walk near him and pull fruit from the tree. He ate it, and how dare he walk past the great leader without showing homage? The furious one lifted a hand to strike the beautiful face. Instead of the satisfying smack he expected, he felt nothing. His hand swung right through the man, who walked away as if he didn't even exist. The furious one stared down at his hands in horror. He lifted his fist to the bright heaven. "You will not defeat me." He stopped as he noticed a colorful winged creature carrying a beautiful creature like unto the man in the garden, yet different. Splish! They landed in front of him, laughing and talking as they swam and played in the current. The striking man-like figure did not seem to notice him, but the winged creature did. The young man and the young woman stood and faced each other. They stared in silence as the tempo changed seductively. Together they imitated the other's every move, never touching. A group of dancers came forward, each carrying a fan made of fig leaves, and duplicated the couple's moves. One at a time, they placed their fan of figs around the couple until they were hidden from the tribespeople. "Where are you?" called the talebearer loudly over the pounding drums. The dancers lowered their branches so the young man's head appeared above the fig leaves and stepped rhythmically around the pair. "I heard you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid," he replied. "Who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree that I commanded you not to eat from?" asked the talebearer. "The woman you put here with me, she gave me some fruit from the tree, and I ate it." "What is this you have done?" the talebearer demanded. "Deceived me, and I ate." The colorful winged creature appeared again, swinging back and forth over the crowds as he somersaulted from vine to vine. The talebearer pointed to him and spoke solemnly as the tribespeople stood up and repeated the phrase in unison. "Because you have done this, and all wild animals, you will crawl on your belly, and you will eat dust all the days of your life. And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers, and he will crush your head, and you will strike his heel." Then the talebearer and the gathering pointed towards the young woman and said, "I will make your pains in childbearing very severe. With pain you will give birth to children, and your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you." Now the crowd pointed towards the young man as the because of you. Through painful toil you will eat of it all the days of your life. It will produce thorns and thistles for you, and you will eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your brow you will eat your food until you return to the ground, since from it you were taken, for dust you are, and to dust you will return. The dancers surrounding the man and the woman dropped their fig leaves and each picked up a worn animal skin. These they wrapped around the couple and disappeared back into the sea of onlookers. The tribespeople all sat while the talebearer continued alone. "The man has now become like one of us, knowing good and evil. He must not be allowed to reach out his hand and take also from the tree of life and eat and live forever." The talebearer approached the couple and chased them away. Do you understand what you have seen, Enoch? "Do you understand what you have seen, Enoch, son of Adam?" asked Onami. "I think so. The young man and the young woman in the garden, that was first Father Adam and Grandmother Eve, right?" Onami nodded. "I almost knew them. For truth, I did not know them until they ate of the fruit." "Yes, their countenance changed after that." Enoch rubbed his arms as if trying to warm himself and cleared his throat. Who was the furious one who fell into the pit?" Onami hesitated and exchanged glances with the other two men. "This time, the one you saw was once called Lucifer," answered Delmar. He was a son of the Most High and the great leader in heaven until the thing which is not good was found in him. Lucifer was the most powerful and beautiful Benai Elohim, the Ancient One, created. Yet his beauty corrupted him, and he sought to take the glory of the Ancient One for himself. Now he is called Satan, the accuser. Enoch peered thoughtfully into the fire. The incredible images were gone. Now he saw only the flickering of amber flames. Enoch remembered the vivid fighting, the terrible punishment. "This you must learn for yourself," said Delmar. What does he mean? Enoch wondered, but said nothing as he watched the two men exchange glances again. "I can tell you this. Satan dwells among you, and also those who follow him," said Anami. "You mean the fallen?" asked Enoch, straightening his back. "Grandmother Eve told us the stories of how the fallen trapped them in the cave of treasures with fire, and how they led them to the top of Mount Arata and left them to die. Yet some other men came and led them safely down." "Yes, the ones who helped your father Adam and aging mother Eve were watchers," said Anami. "Watchers?" "Yes, Enoch, we are watchers." Enoch stared into the eyes of the strange men. He took a sharp breath. The fight with the great pterodactyl, the stranger, the treacherous escape on the cliffs. He stared blankly as the memories came flooding back. The long dark tunnel, the wondrous river in the garden, the Auru, the men of fire, the beloved. Enoch smiled in amazement. He remembered. "Yes, Enoch, the beloved has sent us to help you," said Anami with a gentle smile. Enoch wrinkled his brow and pursed his lips as he thought intently, avoiding the piercing blue eyes of the ebony angel who watched, yet said nothing. "Calls himself Samjaza has come here with a company of men. He claims he can help us. He says he's of the Elohim and that the Ancient One has sent him. Praise the light. Is this true? Do they really know how to heal the sickness?" Enoch rushed on. "Is he trying to decide?" Enoch stopped abruptly. His mouth hung slightly ajar. Is he of the fallen?" Enoch shuddered as he asked the question, remembering the rage of the men who followed Satan. "No, Enoch. Samjaza is a watcher," answered Anami. Enoch relaxed just a bit at the news and looked down as he wiped his damp palms on the top of his thighs. Wait. But if Samjaza is a watcher, then why? Asked Enoch. But there was no one to answer. The watchers had vanished. "I say, Delmar, you should really give me a warning the next time you plan on transforming in the essence to opal. I nearly lost my balance when you pulled me out." "Well, I had to do something because a certain person was just overflowing with information, and I am not sure the Ancient One wants a human to know all of that," said Delmar, becoming a little more golden as his own cues intensified. "I was merely being and encouraging," replied Onami defensively, moving just a little closer to Delmar's face, "not scaring the chap out of his mind with all that 'you must learn for yourself' prattle. Well, at least I have the wisdom to—" "Enough," said Azam calmly, as he quickly whisked a razor-sharp sword between the two. "You both talk too much. A simple beware of Samjaza would have sufficed." Onami and Delmar backed away from Azam's sword, considering the point. Delmar looked away, abashed. Normally he would have thought of that. "You know, good fellow, that was a fine piece of speech," said Anami, changing the subject as he reached for Azam's weapon. "As much as I would like to play with you two, we've got work to do," said Azam sharply, jerking back his sword. No one touched his weaponry. "No wonder the beloved sent me along. Between your squabbles and shenanigans, we'll miss our assignment. Delmar, since you can disguise yourself from Samjaza's men and any fallen, you go to the tribunal and report back. Anami and I will stay and guard Enoch, just in case." "This is absurdity!" cried the pillar, and then thrust it in Father Jared's face. "Who is being the impious one now?" Some of the newer tribunal members startled at Father Lamech's outburst, while Father Seth merely rolled his eyes. "The Ancient One may excuse a fool once, Lamech, but do not expect his mercy twice," replied Lamech. But do not expect his mercy twice, replied Father Jared coolly as he grabbed Father Lamech's staff firmly and moved it away from his nose. You have been bold to take more than what is allowed. Do not... Oh, is it that again? My wives are my concern. Do not be jealous because you do not have the strength to satisfy you, Lamech. You only took 2 wives in a feeble attempt to increase the seats of the tribe of Cain on the council through sheer numbers. Through your false doings, you have unjustly obtained 3 firstborns, the twins Jubal and Jabal, born of Adnah, and Tubal-Cain, born of Zillah. Now you would offend the ancient by this union? Cursed fool, your jealousy has shaded your eyes. Our tribe outnumbers that of your father Seth because the sons of Cain are strong and our daughters are favored. The hidden Father has sent great revelation and truth through this Simjaza, yet you refuse it just because your precious Enoch was not the one to discover it. Enoch did as he was instructed. He brought back the Alru that we know relieves the sickness, and we know the Alru is sent by the ancient. We know nothing of this Simjaza. Silence, commanded the voice. All heads turned as Father's hair glowed in the light of the fire. Do you think this is what Father Adam wants? Do you? To see his sons, the fruit of his loins, arguing like childlings? Jared lowered his eyes at the rebuke of his great-great-great-grandfather. Lamech stared stonily at the revered old man, but did not move. The room grew heavy with the silent question. Would Lamech challenge a gold? Seth is right, said Grandmother Eve calmly, breaking the tension. The purpose of this communion is for us to come into agreement as one. Arguing only divides us further. It is time for us to decide. To be fair, the twins Jubal and Jabal will not vote. Eve raised a hand, and 2 Sabasi men quickly entered the chamber and stood by the 2 firstborns of Lamech. Please escort these honored ones to the celebration. Lamech opened his mouth in protest. It is not a matter of your personal choice to marry more than one wife, Lamech, but one of equity. Since the matter is in question, neither the house of Jared nor the house of Lamech will have a firstborn present in the vote. And the lines in Lamech's hard face relaxed just a little as he motioned for his sons to go with the Sabasi. Once again, Great Mother, you honor us with your wisdom. Let them have their way. After all, we still outnumber the tribe of Seth with 6 seats on the council to their 5. I am glad you agree that justice serves the tribunal best, said Eve smoothly, because Father Cain will also be escorted to the celebration. Since death prevents Abel from ever partaking of our communions and rule, it is only fair that Cain be excluded as well. Partaking of our communions and rule, it is only fair that Cain be excluded as well. Cain rose to his intimidating full height, nearly as tall as one of the Elohim, as if to approach Grandmother Eve, but did nothing. He merely said, Very well, Mother, in a low, unsettling tone. You the chamber, knocking away the hands of the 2 small Sabasi males, poised to accompany him. Everyone breathed easier. No one dared challenge Grandmother Eve. Not even Lamech was that bold. She was practically invincible. She bore no visible signs of the sickness and still shared the full strength the Ancient One had given to Adam on the day of their creation. Having no father or mother save for the Ancient of Days, no one really knew how the Hidden Father would react to an attack on her person, and no one wanted to find out and risk another curse like Cain. As Eve continued as she clasped her hands tightly, each elder will choose. Who shall we declare as bearer of the seed and the ruler of Adam's realm? Shall it be Enoch, 7th of Adam, who returned first with the Alru of the Ancient as ordered? Or shall it be Tubal-Cain, 7th of Adam, who returned with the Elohim?